Hey, it's 28 millimeter RPG. Rick here. And what am I doing? Well, I'm reading some comments and stuff like that, and watching some YouTubes. There's a pretty interesting YouTube video by Max Bovin. Um, who I have some interesting things to say about his most recent video, but I'll get into that in another video. Right now, uh, this is my GM diary kind of feedback on the game that I had. And I just want to say it was so cool to finally be back with everybody playing our Traveler game once again. When you get back into playing after being away from it so long, it's kind of hard to get right back into the you know being in character role playing like we were trying to achieve before. I was just super happy to be finally back, game mastering. You could kind of see me going, maybe I should tell these guys kind of keep it in character, but I didn't. I just wanted them to finally let loose because it kind of felt like a game where we had been kind of pent up and held back for such a long time, like over I guess over a month, I guess, since our last episode. And it was just so fun to be put back into the ship and playing the game. Um, and there's and I was fine. We kind of sloughed off on the in character, kind of keeping everything in character, but we did manage to kind of get back in and focus as we were playing. So, which was cool. So when you first see us playing, yeah, there was a couple of minor Mother May I moments or talking out of character, but that was fine because once again, it was just fun to be back with those guys and playing with them again. And we did have a really good talk at the very end, like off camera, like after the game. We usually do have a conversation amongst each other, talk about not just game things, but just general life stuff and things like that happening, which is lots of fun too, because we get to know each other a little bit better as well, because not all of us are together in the same spot. Uh, Only me, Spencer, and Josh are located in the same town, and as you've seen, we're here. We're able to play other games as well too. One of the things that we were thinking about was doing like an actual role playing game here in my room, and doing a continuing on um, with the Castles and Crusades game that we had going before, which we kind of stopped because Sundays are taken up doing this, and we did have every second Monday, but now we're kind of have some more leniency. We're not going to be able to right away get back into the Cipher System game, God Forsaken, only because our schedules are all kind of mishmashed right now, and Mondays are kind of out of the question for the moment, which is fine. We can continue or do something else for that later on. I don't know, whatever. It's still up in the air. One of the things I really wanted to talk about is a topic that Steve Young brought up, and he commented. He said, "Rick, after you have run this adventure campaign, you should turn it into a complete campaign module. You have some great ideas." I appreciate your comment, Steve. Um, but the thing is, now a lot of what when we game depends on what the players do, and it's kind of a mindset that you have to have. That I'm not actually, you know, I don't actually have a ton of notes written down, and a lot of it is on the fly reactions to what's occurring, and that is based on NPC. So all my notes really is NPC notes, their goals, what they want to accomplish, And sometimes they can be swayed or changed as the game continues on. For example, the NPCs that are within the party. And other things that can happen is goals change also slightly, like their overall arcing goal may stay the same, but how they achieve it may end up switching up a little bit more. Uh, they like sometimes a bad guy can be swayed to achieve their goal in a more malevolent or malevolent or they may be swayed into becoming more nicer in their approach, or they may get a little bit more crueler in their approach depending on their how they react to the whole situation that's happening with them. So you might see bad guys kind of going, okay, there's a chance that we could come to some sort of a compromise, or the bad guy may say, you guys are all toast. I'm roasting the entire situation here. Hit the nuke button. Um, but that would make a really short game. So when we play, I have like for example, our session last night, I had no other notes other than what I had last. Like you've seen basically my notes in the interface we were using. And I was using the Fari app. Now, I'll put a link in there in case anybody else is interested in checking out the Fari app. It was traditionally used for Fate, but it can use all the die rolls, as you may have seen in the exemplar of my end on the GM end of looking at the interface. But it can do any game system. You just have to make the character sheets. It does have I think there's like about 150 ready-made character sheets that people have made already. Once I refine this traveler character sheet, I might go ahead and upload it as a in their repository of character sheets so that other people can go ahead and utilize it. There's a couple of things I wouldn't mind seeing whether or not it can do, is like add extra modifiers to the rules somehow. But I will look into that deeper, and I'll actually join their Discord and see whether or not there's any kind of workarounds and stuff like that, or mods that people are working on with that, which would be cool. But like I said, back to the topic of Steve's ideas is putting this adventure into a campaign. Um, the thing is, it has kind of like a module kind of thing. Um, the only thing that I could see is compiling notes on data on each of the worlds, ideas of who rules them, what they're doing, the goals of each of the associations, like the organizations and stuff, other associations that they're linked to, who are their allies, who are their enemies, that sort of thing. Stuff like as far as locations and stuff like that, and maps of locations. Like you might have maps of like the overall, like a geographic representation of the political affiliations in each region or something like that, and a little subtext on each, and stuff like that. But as far as locations, what to do in them, and all that stuff, that really relies on what the players want to do. And in Traveler, you have to kind of keep that really, really open. You, I mean, I've been fortunate that these players are kind of moving in directions where I can kind of predict somewhat where they're going to go next. And I know I've given them like tasks which they are trying to follow through in some sort of a method, and sometimes that doesn't come through. And as you can see, even time can be an issue in space, especially when you're dealing with technologies that are like technology 15 and beyond. It's like anything can really happen, especially with the ancients technology and stuff like that that crop into my game. You never know, and a lot of this stuff isn't outlined in Traveler in the books themselves unless you start grabbing the add-on books like in the like the Journey Through the Rift or something like that. In those ones in that series, or or some of the older modular stuff about the ancients and stuff like that. Everybody's Traveler game is going to be totally different and everything. And I find that a lot of game masters will create their own thing in order for them to relate to it a lot better. Because if you have something that's like a written book, it's kind of daunting to go ahead and go through that volume of pages and pick out everything and remember everything in those pages, and that is a hard thing. That's a hard thing to swallow. That's why I just use the Traveler map and I look at the system. And you can see this with some of my old videos on how I put together a game session in Traveler. Is you pick an area, a region, and you're kind of like get the idea of who's running it and all that. None of that's written down. You just have basic prompts on each of the systems, which is outlined by the world universal world profile, and it's up to you how to determine what this universal profile is all about. A lot of extra information I have to kind of put in a little asterisk here. A lot of extra information on that Traveler map is contained in Traveler 5. So, in order for you to get to utilize the full information of what you're seeing in the Traveler map, including some of the background info on the what you can buy there, what's being traded, what is its commodities, kind of, it's kind of generalized, but it gives you a little bit more detail in Traveler 5 on what that all means. So on the map, you'll get little symbols or little short, acronyms of different things, and it's up to you you as the game master to determine what that is. Now, technologies and stuff like that can vary, like in each technological society. Like, for example, we're us humans here on Earth today, we have vast, advances in technology only in certain fields of the public eye. There's also going to be, the stuff which is developed in government funded, entities where they have, these big brains going on, conjuring up all these crazy ideas and actually getting them into, physicalizing these things into reality. And believe me, there's we've got crazy looking computers and stuff like that. I mean, you can get incredible technology built into your computer these days, but it pales in comparison to what some of these skunk works may have. They have supercomputers that totally rival what we have today. They're probably already got quantum computers going on in the background for probably the last 10 years, maybe even more. They just don't release this into the public, and that's the way you should be thinking with your Traveler games and stuff. um Now, as far as coming up with ideas as you go along, like as the game flows, a lot of that comes up with is depends on the game master themselves, their experience in like in the world, like in our world, in our real world. When you What I do is I'll walk around with my note 8 here. It's got a little pen in the bottom. Most phones now will have like the ability to use a touch pen now. So you just buy a touch pen, you can write notes. What I challenge every game master that's out there that wants to go ahead and do a traveler game is go to different locations and write different notes down. Like for example, let's say just general areas. So you go downtown, and maybe you decide, hey, maybe I'll go to the hospital. You're going in for a checkup for the hospital or something like that. So you go into the hospital and you look around. And you just write down notes on what you see. You might see stuff like, oh, we see there's tape everywhere, kind of like these different multicolored tape on the walls or on the floor that leads you to different areas. It's kind of like little guide area. If you want to go to where X-rays and stuff are done, you follow the blue line or whatever it is. Follow the yellow line if you want to go get blood testing and stuff like that done. You also take notes of things around the area. Contain like for example, sometimes you're wandering around, you see these especially nowadays, you see these big bottles of sanitizer. That stuff's flammable and everything, right? But like in most cases, got a lot of alcohol content. And you think, in certain situations, if there was like any action inside of a hospital area, doing a karate kick and whacking one of those things off the wall, and say if the player does a really good roll, he can aim that thing towards a party of invaders that are coming down the hall, and splash them, and then go ahead and take a matchstick and go flick and go whoop, and big fire happens, right? Something like that. Or if they do a fail, it goes all over the wall and all over themselves as well. So either way, it creates a situation which could be intense or exuberant in the the outcome of the game. It kind of leads, because I'm going for action movie kind of stuff in my games a lot more than sophisticated talkie to each other, and getting into political interactions with different societies or something like that. I mean, certainly that will come up, and probably more will come up as Adamus, Gordo's character, comes into play. Sometimes he'll get into negotiating things with people more so, but the other players are more kind of like there's a couple of them that are very action orientated. So it depends on the your players. So you want to kind of gear your observations of each area to how you want to play your games. So if I'm thinking action oriented games, I'm looking around and writing notes to myself on, okay, that's a cool idea. We're looking at up around at how the structure of how the lights are and everything, whatever LED or fluorescent tubing or whatever. And you think, yeah, some of these things can explode and stuff like that if you whack them real hard, and things like that. So you're just coming up with different weird ideas about different environments for the players, and you just write lots of notes down like that, and keep that. Even just writing it down and keeping that in your head as a written note, because when you write it down, it tends to stick in your head. It's kind of telling your brain that, hey, that's important. You are writing it down. Yeah, keep that little nugget of information in your head, and then you come up with these things whenever a situation arrives like that. I'm not saying that I plan for a hospital scene to happen, or what, but just to have these little nuggets of information that you can use. You could use the little directional tape, in any kind of situation. I'm sure it would be still used in the future, you know, um, or something similar. Maybe it's a holographic kind of overlay in the general area that happens, where it guides you along and stuff like that. You can kind of think abstractly like that. and you're thinking, okay, what would the future have in this sort of situation? So you have to think that way and come up with these kind of ideas in order to make things interesting um in your game. So, I mean, for me to write that down in a module format is probably a lot of information for one to take. I think one of the if we're going to go like back into like the fantasy and some of my favorite uh utilitarian modules to use. L1 the Secret of Bone Hill has always been a really good one for me because I know everything in it. I don't really have to, I would have to map, for me to look at, and I would know who lived where and where Felix is and where and all the characters that the players would probably run into. And I know the motives of most of the NPCs in that scenario with Rustenford. And then I add in a whole bunch of extra stuff, in the mountains, in the hills around them too, besides what's detailed out in the game world as far as that module. I do take out I do keep the druids in, but I change the druids a bit because I think a druid colony of gamblers is kind of weird, but I think it was kind of like more of an old school idea, and I don't know what the maker of the module thought. Maybe it was a cool gimmicky game idea that he thought of. But it's easy for you to throw things out and put different things in at your leisure. So I really encourage that as far as if you want to have something cool happen instead. You think that idea is pretty lame, just do it. Just do something different. Um, Also, I find using AI art, like you're seeing AI art flashing around here, changing on my screen as I'm talking here. There's lots of cool ideas that you can gather from each of these images and stuff, and you're like, how would that be used in a game? It might come up with a for idea for you in the future. There's sometimes it comes up with some really weird looking craft and stuff like that. If you're doing sci-fi scenes or if you're doing fantasy scenes, it might come up with an unusual looking monster or something. So you're like, I got to use that, and that's the thing is the game master has to go have the initiative to go around in his daily life and be more observant and take notes on everything and come up with ideas. So that's what I would say would be more effective than me making an actual kind of module. um but if I was to do something like that, write something, it would be more or less kind of like a massive guideline on game mastering in general. Science fiction because in a fantasy game, the players can only move as fast as they can walk or ride a horse. Um, in a sci-fi game like Traveler, you do have a consistent thing like the ship, especially if it's owned by one of the players, that will be kind of an overriding theme all the way through the game. Is maybe it's a story like Serenity, where it's the crew of the ship, and the crew of the ship continue on. There might be some changes in the crew members as things go on, as this Traveler game is gone through, and and at least you have something that continue like that you can develop further and further in your brain. The things going on with the ship each time. Things are breaking down, stuff is being upgraded, improved in various ways. The differences in technology, things might be, evasive technologies. Some of them might be purely, just, it just does, it's just functional technology that stays static. It depends on what kind of, society it came from and everything. Does a society, want evasiveness? Does it even think that way, evasiveness as being evasive? Maybe it's part of the construct of that society. It's for the betterment of the entire society that it integrates with everything. Those are things that you got to think of as well. You're coming up with ideas that maybe kind of controversial and stuff like that. And it's just Traveler is so vast that the one from one system to another could be truly a totally different thing altogether, and you're just trying to figure it out for that bit of where your first session at that new system is like, okay, what do we see here and how do we interpret this? And then from then on it's like, okay, now we'll modify, we'll how is we will adapt to what's going on here, meld into the society in order to get what we need out of here, and then boom, off to the next system. And that's part of the fun part about this thing. Things can go so wrong in each situation, and I'm just playing it however it comes up. um, so like I was saying, my last notes, I did I just basically had what I had from my last session was the encounters they encountered, uh, what was told, what was being done last session, and I brought up certain things like Jack's invention came up in that last session, which was I think everybody almost forgot about that. So Jack, being that I'm playing Jack, the NPC, he was very adamant that he wanted to do some testing with this thing, and he thought it was the greatest. This thing could be the greatest breakthrough, and as far as he was concerned, in the entire universe. And as the players are finding out, this thing is both terrifying and somewhat useful in getting themselves out of situations in a forward thinking time, a kind of way. Um yeah, it's so you're when you bring in other characters with other things and what they do, and it kind of really puts a twist in some of the things that are going on, and it can alter the game significantly from hour to hour. So you don't for me, it's kind of challenging, to come up with things on that moment. So a lot of times I will have cards, like the cipher cards are very good for bringing prompts and ideas. There's also a card system in the in that Fari app, which is really cool. You can make your own cards as well. So I think that is a supreme idea that hasn't been really used in anywhere else, which is fully integrated in the function of that app as is. Other ones you have to kind of add on little features, like, yeah, in Fantasy Grounds you either have to add a module or take the card system from the Savage Worlds and integrate it somehow into your whatever game you're playing. So, and I like the Fari app. It's just got basic bare bones, and because we're doing theater of the mind, you don't need like to use the map or the drawing app that's attached to it, but it does come in handy maybe if you want to kind of verify a thing that maybe the player's seeing something in a certain way. Whenever I do maps, they're very simple. A lot of boxes with lines, or like lines for corridors, boxes for rooms. Just a description of what's in there. Maybe about between 4 to 5 items in each room, and the players place it wherever they want in their head, because to me it doesn't matter. It's just those are the tools on hand that you can use, and that's the way I think. The players are thinking, okay, the bed's here, whatever is in each of the place. And it's entirely up to them to decide on how they're going to use what's in their room to their advantage, and it just makes for a better gameplay experience when the players can, kind of put those things into perspective as how they see it. Because what I'm seeing in my head, and what they're seeing in their head is going to be two totally different things. And each player is going to have a totally different viewpoint as well that may conflict. But as soon as one player speaks up, the other players are going to kind of relate to what the player is talking about. And to them, it doesn't matter. It conforms to the structure that they're creating at the moment. So a lot of what we do is very, very was spontaneous and I don't know, off the cuff kind of idea. So it's very improv. And the more you do it, the more better you get at it. So that's what I have to say to that. So as campaign module, it would be a lot of, if I was gonna write it, it'd be a lot of stripped down notes on everything. So a lot of fill in the blanks. Um, so I don't know. I would probably be better off writing a manual on the mind think that you have to go through and some of this stuff. It's kind of like, yeah, you could go ahead and it's like that thing about the, you can give a person a fish, but if you give them a fishing rod and the know-how, of how to build that fishing rod and how it works, and he can get his own fish. So that's more or less what I would rather do is give game masters the power to create and make things on the fly and give them the tools in order to do so. I mean, probably not very many people think about, observing their areas as they pass through them nowadays, since most people are just staring at their phone all the time as they're walking, which is the thing now. And that art of observing your surroundings is kind of being reduced on a lot of us younger folk. So they gravitate to a lot of these games which have everything lined up for them and it's more board gamey and stuff. But to use your imagination is a skill in its own too. So some people have really vivid imaginations, others don't. It's all to the point of view. It's their from their perspective. Anyways, I hope you've yeah, it's 33 minutes now of enjoying what I'm talking about. So I'm gonna stop now and and say, well, I'll have to think about that. I'll have to think about how to do. Maybe I should do a toolkit on how to run a campaign in Traveler, maybe, or something like that, instead of uh, an actual campaign, written detailed. Because that would be like most game masters. Um, you know, most of them would not read the whole thing and would rather take parts of it and cannibalize stuff anyways. So that's what I would think. So it's up to each individual game master to figure out what they want to do with the material. I figure it'd be more useful to give them ideas like that and come up with some format that makes that uh, evident, and they're like, oh yeah, I can use this. But anyways, that's my blah 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 about this. If you like what you see and like what you hear, learning stuff just like me, I learn new things every day, and from your feedback too. subscribe. Just hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's free. And I'm not gonna monetize at all, never. Talk to you guys later.